Welcome to episode number 16 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gambling industry. We have with us Adam Candy, 2E's Know Why. We have with us Dustin Gowker. We are missing Eric Ramsey this week, making a cross-country trip, so we will get him back in the flow whenever he gets settled over here in Las Vegas. But guys, not an incredibly busy week, but certainly stuff that we can inform our great listeners about. And whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, please go in, subscribe, rate, and review, and let us know just how amazing this is each and every week for you guys to listen to this stuff. Really, really, really appreciate it. Dustin, let's kick things off here with Arkansas. We have a bet over there. We've had a bet being placed.
Yeah, this is the 9th state where a legal single game sports wager has taken place by my count. It's also perhaps the most underrated launch of a sports book that I think we've seen in a new state. It's usually a cause for fanfare when there's a new state that has its first sports bet, and this one's like Oaklawn, which is a racetrack and casino in Arkansas, has kind of like really kind of soft pedaled it. There wasn't much PR leading up to it. They kind of had we had a little bit of a grand opening with the general manager of the property placing the first bet, which was inexplicably, I think, on the Cowboys over the Giants. I guess some regional interest in the Cowboys. But anyway, long story short, I'm soft selling this too, but we do have another state where you can bet on sports now.
Now, Adam, we were discussing in the company Slack as to who should have made the first bet there in Arkansas. My vote was John Daly. How in the hell they didn't get John Daly to show up and make the first bet is beyond me.
I think John Daly was a great option. I also thought that maybe you could have put Bobby Petrino on his motorcycle and brought him right down to the book to place bet number one. If not him, how about this? Here's one from the Arkansas past. How about Scotty Thurman?
Yeah. I mean,
think Scotty Thurman would have been a great fit.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I thought that, listen, John Daly, you probably could have got him to come do it for, I don't know what, a bottle of Jack Daniels. He'd show up to do that for sure.
He'd roll the RV right into the book parking lot. He'd place the first bet, and then he'd go outside to sell some merch.
He would. A very. Should we?
Let's get bigger though. Why not Slick Willie? We should have gotten Bill Clinton in there. That would have been great, right?
Now, if they did not at least extend the offer to Bill Clinton, then they don't know what they're doing. The offer should have at least been extended.
Yeah, that would. That would have been the best first bet by far of anybody that's had one so far. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like Arkansas, like you said, this really went under the radar, and then they just decided to really, really keep it under the radar by not getting one of their few celebrities they have there in Arkansas to show up and place that first bet there. We were talking about Maine last week on this podcast, Adam, and maybe we overstepped a bit.
Things have slowed down in the Pine Tree State, and they might be on sort of a permanent hold. The Governor Mills decided that she did not want to extend gambling in the state. That's according to a couple of the lawmakers that LSR's Matthew Cradell spoke to. And so we're in a weird legislative limbo with Maine, where it's not vetoed, it's not signed, it's just there. And the quirk of the law is that the governor has until 3 days within the beginning of the next legislative session to make a decision on the bill. Now, when is that next legislative session going to be? There's not another one scheduled until January. So this could be sitting there until next year, or there is a chance of a special session reconvening at some point during the summer, which would, again, turn the clock forward on this. So it's interesting. Maine had a bill that I think a lot of people were excited about, a bill that was going to set up some significant mobile statewide, for the low of $2,000 for a license. So overall, it was a bill that a lot of anticipation surrounded, and it's just going to have to go on ice for now.
Kind of a bummer there. We were certainly interested in Maine getting on board here. I know Maine is one of your favorite states that begins with M, Dustin.
That is true. I've been to Maine and the Katy National Park there, beautiful. For the exciting part about this, I was close to paying out my bets on on how many states would legalize sports betting this year with new laws. So the number there was 6.5. we had basically put Maine on the positive side of the ledger as number 7, and so we're back on the under. So you're really getting your maximum money out of the sweat on this bet if you have money down at DG Sportsbook.
Are you going to allow any karma payouts or anything like that? The people who thought their bet got the over there.
No, I'm not doing any early payouts or any of that stuff. Action stands as bet.
I like it. It's some good stuff right there. Let's talk about Indiana, Adam. September 1, maybe?
Our sources are saying September 1, which would be the first day that the law allows for sports betting in Indiana. We talked to a couple of folks who said that among stakeholders in Indiana, they're being told, be ready for September 1st because there will be action in the state if the regulators are able to get things going the way they want. The draft regulations came out this week. Really nothing outside of what we already knew about the law. There's going to be statewide mobile, $100,000 license fee, 9.5% tax on gross gaming revenue. So it looks like pretty much what was expected. And if this comes to pass, then, I think Dustin might have a little bit more to sweat when it comes to states with legal sports betting activity. Remember that also to that end, New Hampshire is still hanging out there right now, waiting on potential signatures. So ultimately, Indiana looks like it's going to be sooner than later. And of course, the key to that September 1st date is that NFL season starts on September 5th.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there is no coincidence that they are aiming for September the 1st. As you mentioned, you certainly want to get there in time for NFL season, and that would do it for them. Opening kick there on Thursday the 5th, and then opening weekend on the 8th of September as well. So I am pretty sure that date has a lot to do with that.
No doubt about it. And I think the one piece I forgot to mention in my initial spiel is that that's just going to be retail. For the September 1st launch. From what we hear, it's going to take a little while to get mobile tested and ready to run. I would think you're probably looking at the turn of the year for that to happen in Indiana.
Let's head out west here, Dustin. This is your stomping ground. This is Oregon. What can we tell people about Oregon?
Yes. 2 months from now, I'm going to be betting on sports. It's going to happen. Excited. Oregon Lottery tells us that September 8th, so that's that first Sunday of the NFL season, is their targeted date. So basically, I think Indiana and Oregon are basically in the running for the next state to be number 10 with sports betting. Definitely exciting stuff there. They've been working on this for a while. They revealed to us some more of their plans than they have before. So they definitely have. It seems like everything's squared away. 2 months from now, all things go according to plan. They're on track there. They're involved with SP Tech, which we've always talked about on this podcast several times. Still waiting on word for the DraftKings SP Tech deal, whether that's finalized. That throws an interesting wrinkle in things. Also interesting in that here in lottery, we have video lottery retailers kind of everywhere. You walk into, not unlike where you have slot machines all over Vegas, we have these video lottery terminals in most taverns in the states of a certain size, and they're going to have sports betting kiosks at these, not right away, but sometime a little down the road. So you're going to be, have kiosks kind of all over state, and then also the ability to wager mobily all over the state, which so it's a pretty aggressive rollout for sports betting across Oregon if it all comes to fruition in time.
In 2 months' time, Dustin Gowker placing legal sports bets in his own home state. Who would have thunk it?
It's a wild time to be alive.
I mean, sure. something is going to be really, really awesome whenever Dustin is hopping in our Slack machine talking about his bad beats and stuff. Everyone has to listen to mine sometimes. I can't wait to have to listen to yours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really bet unless I'm in Vegas right now or in New Jersey or Pennsylvania for that matter. So I imagine that will go up a little bit to the chagrin of my wife, but there will be some wagering taking place by me in Oregon. Yes.
Let's talk about some NFL people getting involved in sports betting in the sports betting business here.
Yeah, so we have this company that's been really been aggressive on the PR front. Adam and I can both attest, called BetWorks, which is powering a New Jersey sportsbook that's supposed to launch, I think, about a month. I think the Score media company apps for sports is launching its own sportsbook next month, and they just revealed to us some of their initial investors, or their latest round of investors, and includes some pretty big names that most listeners will know. Richard Seymour, former New England Patriot; Ronnie Lott, Hall of Famer, former 49er. So they're both on their advisory board, and they're both venture capitalists as well after their playing career. So they kind of actively invest in lots of things. And this is a sports book. So for me, I don't think we're aware of anybody else that we know of where like athletes are this intimately involved, or former athletes are this intimately involved with a sports betting operation. I think you're certainly going to see more of that as time goes on. But interesting to see some pretty big names involved in the legitimate and legal sports betting business.
BetWorks also signed Jay Rude, who was the former president of Race and Sports over at MGM, was there for over 25 years. And so he has now moved over there and is going to be their head bookmaker. So very interesting moves being made by this company. Now, Adam, I think one of the things we should point out is people aren't going to necessarily walk into a casino or even anywhere and really see like BetWorks. This is more of a B2B business as opposed to a B2C business.
I think that's important to understand for a few of the names that we hear on a regular basis. You don't go in and see a Canby branded sportsbook either, but they're doing most of the trading for DraftKings, at least for now. And so BetWorks is not going to be a name plastered on the side of a building, no.
And to round things out here, able to get in a quick little podcast for you here on a Friday. Talk a little bit to us here, Adam, about MGM and the AAF.
Well, the MGM AAF bankruptcy situation certainly is interesting. The defunct AAF, which, we hardly knew has about a $7 million debt in bankruptcy to MGM. And MGM, of course, got involved with the AAF as an exclusive provider of in-play. And what was promised was going to be some heady stuff. We were looking at potential use of biometrics and just some really, really advanced in-play that was teased that never really came to pass, like most of the AAF. So the deal that has been worked out with the bankruptcy trustee that has not yet been approved by the bankruptcy judge is that MGM would agree to reduce its claim by about $2 million to $5 million, and that would get them control of whatever sports betting app technology the AAF had worked on. Now, the real question, of course, is in what form is that technology right now? How close is it to being a finished product? No one really knows the answer to that. Fair to say that from MGM's perspective, when you're talking about $2 million, it's really not that much to a company of that size, even despite some of the financial troubles that you've probably heard about recently with MGM and the massive layoffs that they've gone through. $2 million on the balance sheet really isn't much, especially if that technology could eventually turn into something that not only MGM could potentially use as a market advantage, but that it could use to enhance its deals with Major League Baseball, with the NBA, with the NHL as well. So I think it's a worthwhile gamble by MGM, and for the AAF, I think they're just trying to find any way to bring down their potential debt that they can.
Matt, what would you pay for the defunct AAF betting technology? If you had limitless amounts of money?
Yeah, I'd certainly take if I was a big company like MGM, I would certainly take a risk for a couple of $1 million here. Dustin, this is one of those things where you talked about it a lot. Was they were behind the times over there in New Jersey. They didn't launch it at the same time everyone else did. They had trouble getting the iOS app through the Apple Store, so they were really late launching that as well. The app in itself, certainly the one in Nevada is terrible. The one over in New Jersey isn't that much better, and they've yet to be able to make any real headway. I know that the brick and mortar does pretty well there at Borgata, but as far as the mobile side of things, so I think if you're MGM and Scott Butera, who took over kind of that part of the company for them, I think, throwing $2 million or something like this to see what you maybe can make out of it is probably a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, even if you're just taking what they've done so far for the AAF and applying that to what you're working on a larger scale, like, I'm not a development person, but maybe there's something there that like just helps you get to that. Just know it. Just seeing what they were doing and working on. Can you take that, somehow implement that in your own sports, in your own product down the road? Who knows? We also said they're working on they have a joint venture with GVC to work on sports betting in the United States moving forward. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here. I don't know how exciting this is in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, I'm with you. Take a flyer, see maybe there's something useful that you can use down the road.
And Dustin, we're not a podcast that throws rumors out there or anything, but obviously a very big one about the newly rebranded Paddy Power Betfair going private was certainly something that shook up the internet for a couple of days, but it seems like that has calmed down. They've come out and denied that, correct?
Yeah, there was a huge stock increase earlier this week that on the apparent rumor that they were going to be taken private. Obviously, Paddy Power Betfair, now Flutter, which is a betting term in the UK, I guess. It's a really weird for us to hear that. Like, what is Flutter? I keep hearing, I'm like, it's a weird for an international company. I mean, fine in the UK. Anyway, yeah, there was this rumor. There hasn't been anything coming of it. Doesn't mean that it's not still something in the background, but yeah, there's we're also looking at a world where DraftKings probably wants to do an IPO. So it'd be pretty funny if we saw FanDuel go back to private and then DraftKings go public. Who knows, again, how close we are to a DraftKings IPO, but always wild times in the sports betting industry as things shake up.
And Adam, if there's anything to this rumor whatsoever, if anything comes down the pike, our good listeners can definitely find the latest at LegalSportsReport.com, correct?
You can go to LegalSportsReport.com. You can go to @LSPReport on Twitter. Those are the two sources where you can get the most up-to-date information. Of course, once a week, you can find us right here on the LSR podcast. And I just have one question coming off the Flutter story. Am I the only one who hears that and thinks of that terrible Robin Williams movie, Flubber?
Yeah, I know. I actually think of several different things, some of which we can't even talk about on this podcast. Yeah, I mean, there's just, I don't know, the name in general. I think if they had it to do all over again, maybe they would think, we are going to be doing a lot of business in the U.S. Maybe we should get a word that doesn't just instantly make every person in the States think of something completely different.
Well, I guess maybe it wasn't made for us in the States, and our American elitism is creeping in again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to remain elite no matter what.
I like it, guys. Hey, appreciate you guys being here this week with us. A little abbreviated version of this. Thanks to Adam and Dustin for the heavy lifting this week, as I was a little bit out of pocket here. Guys, as always, we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. And you can find these guys on the Twitter @AdamCandy2Es, No Y @Dustin Gowker. And if you want to follow my ramblings @MattBrownM2. For Adam, for Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.